Hello everybody, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today we are returning to War in the Pacific Admirals Edition, my Let's Play series against Evoken. This is the May 25th replay of 1942, and I'm imagining things will be a little quiet. Things haven't been super active since Evoken took over. I know he's been dealing with some housekeeping, if you will, on the Japanese side, and so we haven't seen a ton of major pushes yet. I'm still expecting the Philippines to fall eventually. It feels like that should be happening soon. I also feel like we were probably going to see the Japanese make a push into Burma before too long, and probably a push somewhere in China also before too long. But thus far, we really haven't seen too many indications of those things happening yet. We just got a hit but no explosion from a Japanese submarine firing on an American merchant, so that's a nice change of pace. You know, with the Mark 14 always failing, it's nice anytime the Japanese have a submarine torpedo fail, so good for us there. Now, in today's video, we are going to be doing 3 turn replays, so actually this is the May 24th replay, sorry, not the 25th. But we will be doing 3 turn replays in today's episode because I've already gotten 2 turns completely done. So we'll take a look at what both of those turns replays look like, and then we'll also see what the 3rd turn looks like as well. I may dive into the actual turns themselves. I've already obviously issued orders on 2 of the 3 turns, but if we want to take a look at some stuff like aircraft loss and things like that, this is a pretty quiet turn. Some Japanese bombing going on in the Philippines, but not a lot else going on so far other than that submarine, which we saw fire a torpedo not that long ago. Waiting to see if there's anything else that happens here of note. I don't actually, it's been a while since I played this turn, so I don't actually remember. But we'll find out here in the coming moments. So again, a lot of air activity over the Philippines, some air activity over China, and that's kind of about it. We saw the submarine. Oh. All right, so we had our own submarine fire torpedoes on a big Japanese merchant ship there. No hit but no explosion. It's firing the Mark 10 torpedo because it's an S-boat, but it did not manage to score a hit. It did take some depth charge damage. We'll have to take a look at that in the between turn phase to see how bad that damage is on the S-40, but she got into position against a valuable Japanese cargo ship, so good on the skipper for that. Just pressing the attack home didn't work out. Japanese bombardment at Clark. Doesn't look like there was really anything that happened. They just, you know, used more supply, and our troops continue to hold out into late May of 1942. And yeah, we're progressing here. I don't know if we're going to do multi-streams back over to YouTube on this occasionally. I know that was a new thing that YouTube announced, saying like, hey, you can stream on multiple platforms. And obviously, if you're watching this on Twitch, it's because I'm live streaming there. Usually we live stream here and then post over on YouTube, but we might try out some sort of simultaneous streams between the 2 channels to spice things up a bit. We'll see. I think that's pretty much it for the first turn here. So not a lot of activity, a little bit of sub-activity with some disappointing results for both sides. Trying to remember which one of the saves is what went back to him. So let's jump in here. This is now the May 25th orders phase. This is just after the actual turn replay. So let's take a look at the S-40 off Buna. Moderate damage. Systems 10 damage is a bit higher than you normally want to see. Float damage of 3. That's not really anything to be worried about. No major damage, so it doesn't actually need to be dry docked to repair this damage. She still has a considerable amount of ammo left, probably good enough to leave her on station for another turn or 2 without too much risk of damage, you know, sort of snowballing. You can see here, air-to-air losses, very quiet day in the air today. Only 2 aircraft lost on our side, both operationally, and the Japanese lost nothing, which is not anything you ever want to see as an allied player, but it was a light turn whether we wanted to see it or not. If we take a look at the supplies at the Philippines here, supply situation is getting dire. A lot of these support units have absolutely no supplies left. They are in the process of starving. Still, most of their troops are not disorganized or disabled yet due to lack of supply, but it's certainly not a good look. Some of these units have already started to waste away. Most of them have not, but that will be coming soon. The combat units like the 2nd Filipino Army Constabulary Division still in reasonably solid shape from a disabled or damaged point of view. 4th Marine Regiment also. 41st Philippine Division suffered a bit more. I'm not sure if that was from the attack at Clark Field or if that was from supply, but these guys aren't going to be able to hold out too much longer, so that's something to consider. Probably won't look too far into the logistics side of things because we will be doing multiple turns, but as you can see here, we've got one cargo task force, which is successfully unloaded at Rangoon. We've got another one unloading another 7,500 supply here. Rangoon supplies are at almost 40,000. And no real indication of a Japanese push into Burma yet. We are digging it at Mole Mine. We're at 41% entrenchments. Rangoon is at level 3, working toward 84% of the way to level 4. And then Pegu is also at level 3, 78% of the way to level 4. Extra Chris, this is still the original campaign. Yep. That is the case. It's the 4th player who's come in to try and salvage the situation. Meanwhile, no indication of major Japanese movements in China, with the exception of south of Guilin. The Japanese have pushed 1 unit forward to the gap between Guilin and Luchou, and we only have a fraction of a corps here to defend against them. We've got 1/3 of the 60th Corps in defensive positions. We are shifting our troops that had been northeast of Guilin. We are shifting them off the good defensible terrain to the east of Guilin, and we're moving them south to guard that gap. I got to make sure that he doesn't easily break through here in the south. I don't have enough troops at Guilin or at Luchou to stop a major advance, so I really do need to move these 2,700 troops or 2,700 assault value down here to either drive the Japanese back and establish a defensive perimeter down here, or at least strengthen our position along these 3 hexes. I've also started shifting some other forces south from Chongqing, some units that are in good shape. So we've got the 46th and the 74th Corps, about 700 assault value between them moving south from Chongqing. And then we've got the 5th Cavalry Corps with about 200 assault value moving south. It's a bit of a lighter corps. And I think I've got 1 or 2 more corps moving out of the space. We definitely are bringing in some artillery support as well. But we're shifting troops down from Tuyen. Meanwhile, we do have Chinese troops which have arrived in Burma as well. So there are troops in Rangoon, for example, the 36th and 96th Chinese divisions. We do actually have the entire 5th Chinese Corps at Rangoon right now, with a total assault value of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 600 assault value between all of them. And they can upgrade to something, I want to say on the order of like, in theory, if I had full unlimited access to new squads and stuff like that, I think they could get like close to 2,000 assault value all by themselves. But right now they're resting in reserve here, getting trained up. We're not going to rebuild the unit because they're more likely to pull in new reinforcements and whatnot if we leave them in position for now. We got another 2,000 supplies just off Rangoon coming in here soon. We've got another 37,000 supplies about halfway between Sri Lanka and Rangoon, and then another 4,500 coming down from Calcutta. Actually, another 15,000 coming south from Calcutta. So good deal of supply there. And then meanwhile, we've got the Prince of Wales, which is trying to return to England. 39 float, 38 engine damage. She is 62 days away. Probably all we need to look at right now. So let's get back to the main menu. How do I do that? I don't want to quit the whole game, right? Main menu. I guess I could hit the end turn button. It doesn't really matter because I've already ended this turn. So let's go ahead and back out of here. Just got to adjust some files here on my other monitor, and we'll be right back with you. Okay, so here we are. We are starting the May 25th replay. The previous one was the May 24th replay, and we'll see what happens here on turn number 2 of the day. We had those 2 submarine actions last turn, one by Japan, one by the Allies. Neither one accomplished anything, and then we had the bombing raids More Japanese torpedoes fired at our merchants off Rangoon. More torpedoes missing. Good news for us. I think we had the cargo ships which had already unloaded at Rangoon on the way back to South Africa. Also, we have our own U.S. submarine here off Meaden firing torpedoes against a Japanese destroyer. It missed, and now it's being depth charged. This is a bit of a dicey situation. I threw my subs in toward Meaden because it's a major oil facility, so it definitely is something where there are going to be rich targets to hit there. The fundamental problem, though, is the waters in Meaden are part of the Strait of Malacca, very shallow waters, which makes submarines very vulnerable there. You can see Tautog took 5 hits. So not an ideal situation. Fired torpedoes, didn't accomplish anything, then took a moderate depth charging there. We'll have to take a look at and see how she's doing after that depth charges. I'm curious if the S-40, because again, I don't actually remember, if the S-40 did anything off of Buna. She fired torpedoes last turn, took a bit of a depth charging. We've also got a U.S. submarine here firing off the coast of Japan against a merchant there. You can see another hit but no explosion. We've come to expect that from the Mark 14. The Surrey off of Meaden also firing torpedoes on Japanese destroyers and again missing and taking depth charges here in the shallow waters of the Strait of Malacca. So I've made a calculated decision that I am going to deploy my subs here despite the risk, and we are firing torpedoes at least. We're not accomplishing much, but we're firing torpedoes, and there you can see the Thresher here also off the coast of Japan firing torpedoes, this time at a cargo or against a patrol boat, so maybe not the ideal target to be using torpedoes against, but it looks like she made it out of there with the Japanese dropping depth charges at the wrong depth, so that's good for us. And now we're moving into the air operation phase, so not much going on at sea for our ships, some submarine activity, and that's about it. One Japanese submarine fired torpedoes on a cargo ship and missed. We fired torpedoes on a cargo ship and hit, but there was no explosion. And then we also fired torpedoes on 2 destroyers and missed those as well. Meanwhile, we've got the Japanese continuing their air assault in the Philippines, dropping bombs on Clark Field, doing a modest amount of damage there, but really probably the biggest value for Japan at this point, especially because we have almost no supplies left. And I'm sure he knows it, because remember, Evoken was our logistics officer for a time. He probably is just using that as sort of a training base for his Air Force to get new pilots up, because we know that their experience levels are very low, and that is a problem for them. So, well, we assume their experience levels are low. Maybe we don't know that, but they've lost a lot of bomber pilots. Sally's especially got savaged over Singapore, so definitely something that we're aware of here. England, the date at the moment for the replay we're looking at is May 25th, top right corner of the screen of 1942. So we're still kind of in the offensive phase for Japan where they can launch aggressive actions. We're getting to the phase where the Allies can begin to counter those and counterattack those. I'd say we're at that point now, but it's still one of those things where it's dicey and you got to be careful, because if we were to get our fleets crippled at sea at this point, then it would be another 6 to 12 months before we'd be able to do anything much against them. So we could certainly take a Midway style gamble at this point, but it would be that. It would be a gamble. All right, more bombardments happening in the Philippines. No assault yet there, and a pretty quiet turn. Hey, Hauser, how you doing? All right, so that's a pretty quiet turn. I don't know that we're going to need to look at much in the save file for this turn. We'll probably just jump right to the next replay here. I didn't really see anything where it's like, ooh, we got to look at that. So let's just do that. I mean, that was a very, very quiet turn. So let's just go ahead and start the next replay here in a sec. Submarine Menace. I don't know what that means. That's ominous. All right, so we're on to the May 26, 1942 replay. This is the third replay of tonight's stream. And let's see what happens here. Japanese occupied one of the islands off of Sumatra. We didn't have any forces there, and I guess sort of a zone of control thing. It was just like, all right, the Japanese now control this. That can happen for unoccupied bases, especially dot hexes. Japanese I-156 is sighted and elects not to launch torpedoes at this target. It's a light cargo ship. I guess the Japanese skipper thought it wasn't worth the fish. That was a thing that was common for Japanese submarines. They viewed warships as valid targets, unless there was less glory in sinking. I don't know if glory is the right word, but there was less desirability of sinking merchant ships. That was actually kind of true of American sub skippers early in the war as well. But they obviously switched to commerce rating pretty quick, and the Japanese didn't. Not to say they wouldn't sink cargo ships in certain cases, but it certainly wasn't a focus of theirs in the way that warships were. All right, so we are moving. Fuck. It's a nice big cargo ship off the west coast of Australia. Just ate a torpedo from the I-123 and sank. Great. Tautog is going to get depth charged. Oh, doesn't look like it. I guess it didn't get depth charged. I-157 off of, or in Rangoon? Put a fish into the Santa Eliza. I'm not sure that it can't be in the port because the port is too large. It's protected from submarines breaking into the port. But it did sink a cargo ship here in Rangoon. So the Japanese have two, what looks like good-sized merchants that they sank this turn. It's been kind of probably the most effective use of submarines we've seen in quite some time. Meanwhile, the air assault on the Coast Islands continues. This time is probably the largest raid we've seen. 46 Bettys coming in one strike. It looks like they're flying out of Palembang, if I had to guess, based on the direction of the raid. 143 casualties here. They are definitely... We have two battalions of good Australian troops that I am now regretting deploying there because they're dying. And they don't have good defenses against air attack. We don't have any flak. We don't have any aircraft. We don't have any real entrenchments to hide under either. So I mainly put them there because I didn't want the Japanese to be able to cut the line between Australia and India. But now I'm kind of thinking I should have deployed more expendable troops, not good AIF 1942 troops. But we'll see. Okay, a lot of recon going on. Japanese doing some recon over Rangoon. I'm okay taking some merchant ship losses going into Rangoon also. That doesn't bother me so much. But losing the ship in Rangoon's hex is a little frustrating. Meanwhile, the Thresher fired its fish at a target off of Japan and missed. Looks like the Japanese are dropping depth charges at a too shallow of a depth, and they burn through all their ammo. So, two fish fired by the Thresher, both missed. Allied ships are bombarding Canton Island. I forgot I sent cruisers over there to do that. I sent them mainly because I was curious what the Japanese had and I wanted to see. Looks like it's a special base force based on what we're seeing here in the bombardment. They're also shooting back. I saw a couple of hits there on the, was it the Canberra? I don't think it's anything crippling, but it does look like we took some damage. We've got the, Marutrius? I can't pronounce that, but we bombarded with 4 heavy cruisers and a light cruiser. It claims we inflicted 237 Japanese casualties, which seems like a lot. Mostly non-combatants. 2 guns were disabled. It says 2 airport hits, 6 supply hits, 19 runway hits, and 3 port hits, 2 port supply hits. It says the Australia took 2 shell hits, but not badly damaged at all. No fire or anything like that. So that's nice, I guess. I would like to take Canton Island back. It would really flatten out our forward bases in the South Pacific or South Central Pacific, I guess. Another bombardment attack at Clark Field. Doesn't look like it's going to fall this turn. He doesn't seem in any rush to drive our forces back there. Aden Airfield expands. Karachi, Port Augusta. Okay. All right, so a little bit more action on that turn. We had a naval bombardment, we had some submarine activity, and we definitely have some things to look into once we get out of this replay phase and jump into the actual turn. Okay. Just waiting for this stuff to cycle through. Several cargo ships coming in to as reinforcements. I guess he's right, submarine menace. I mean, I'm not too worried about 2 ships sinking, but let's take a look at, find out more information about those ships. So a 6 victory point value U.S. Navy cargo ship, the Santa Eliza, 3,200 ton cargo capacity. That's not very much. The ship itself was, where do I see the tonnage? Oh, 3,000 tons. So that's a fairly small merchant. Not a coastal merchant, definitely ocean going, but not a big one. Max speed of 12 knots. So amongst our merchant ships, kind of on the lower value. And then we've got the Anatina, Commonwealth cargo ship near Slitherine. She was a bit bigger, 4,200 tons, max speed of 14 knots. That's a bit more of a loss. 14-knot merchant ships are pretty valuable in my opinion. 8 victory value, 4,100 cargo capacity. So that sucks. Meanwhile, if we take a look here at Rangoon, it looks like we've got 37,000 supply. I'm assuming maybe she wasn't in this cargo task force, but we've got 37,000 tons coming in with no escorts. So hopefully that Japanese submarine is running low on torpedoes. Coming into Rangoon this turn. Meanwhile, we've got 2 cargo ships in the process of unloading and remaining 1,800 tons or 1,800 supply value. And then we've got another cargo task force having about 6,000 supply left. Go ahead and dock them. All right. So that is another about 8,000 supply about to unload here. Use our motor gunboats in this hex as ASW possibly. Or do we have any ships in harbor that we want to switch over? No, we don't have any ships in harbor. Okay. Meanwhile, we've got 2 other task forces. This one with about 4,500 supply coming into Rangoon. And then this one with 2 coastal merchants leaving Rangoon. These guys are already out. And then another 10,000 coming in here. Is there a downside to the Japanese not taking the Philippines? Yes and no. I would say the downside to not taking the Philippines is primarily because it ties up 2 or 3 Japanese divisions to ensuring that I don't retake the island. So it does tie up Japanese forces that could be used elsewhere. It doesn't like majorly hurt them because they're going to take it. So at the end of the day, you know, as far as the game's concerned, they'll do what they need to do. But it does hamper their resource availability, which I think could be important for them, especially since they haven't taken Burma yet. They're going to need to take Burma. We're much better dug in and prepared than historically was the case. Not saying we'll stop them, but we should make them bleed a lot more than historically was the case. And so you would think those 2 or 3 divisions would be pretty useful if they were to shift them into Burma rather than in the Philippines. So in that sense, that's where the detriment comes. No indication of a Japanese push in China as far as I can see. Nothing here up in the north near Sian. It looks like it's still just the 1 corps south of Guilin. We've pushed most of those troops which had been east of Guilin into the gap between Guilin and Luchou, except they're north of the target objective. They're moving toward Luchou because that's where the roads go. If we take a look here, we need to move them here, and then we can move them over. Or we can move them south from Guilin, but we're moving them to Luchou. And then maybe we move them east. I think we're 2 days from Luchou, basically. Guilin's fortifications are almost to level 4. So that would be good. Shidagang is at 5, working towards 6. I really need to double check the actual overall supply situation in China. It had been very good, but building past level 5 forts gets very expensive from a supply point of view. We've got 40,000 in Chongqing, 75,000 at Chittagong. And then Cyan has 10,000. Plus the army south of Cyan, which has another 7,000. So I think we're okay supply-wise at the moment in China. Nothing too alarming, but we'll have to take a look at that. Meanwhile, Rangoon's supply situation with all those cargo ships unloading, it's up to 45,000 in Rangoon. Pegu's at 6,300. Mole Mine's at 15,000. The one thing to keep in mind is both Pegu and Mole Mine could be very quickly reduced by enemy battleship guns. Rangoon is upriver, so you can't bombard Rangoon with battleship guns. So that's a little bit more insulated from a supply point of view. But yeah, we're unloading a bunch there. Let's take a look at the Prince of Wales. She's still on her way back to England. She is 60 days away. We could try and use flank speed to cut that in half, but last time we did that, we took extra damage and put ourselves at risk of sinking, so you don't want to do that too much. Meanwhile, our carriers, which are currently refitting at Colombo, or not Colombo, at Cape Town, have about 18 days left. So the minimum upgrade time, I want to say it was 30 days, I think it was. So we've cut into that a good deal, but we're still going to be offline for another 18 days. Actually, and by that point, they're going to be eligible for their June upgrades. I don't know if we just do that right away or if we let them go back to sea. Surface Task Force of battleships arrived at Cape Town. The Revenge, Ramillies, and Resolution, as well as the Trump, Vampire, Vit de Vith. Do these guys have upgrades? 643, 643, so another year on those. Colombo, sufficient supplies, almost 40,000. Karachi's doing very well. We've been pumping tons of oil into India to keep their economy producing considerable amounts of supply. Okay. Unloading 70,000 supply right now from the US, or actually from Cape Town into Melbourne, so that'll be good for Australia. I'd rather pump fuel into Australia. They've got enough industry that'll turn fuel into supplies that you can have considerable amounts of supply. But the supply situation in Australia is fine. Almost 900,000 at Sydney, and that can be parceled out by rail lines. Another 7,000 at Melbourne with another 70,000 coming off. Australia's in great shape supply-wise. Maybe not as much fuel-wise, although they have almost 400,000 fuel at Sydney, which I'm assuming is the primary hub. Another 120,000 at Melbourne. So a reasonable amount of fuel there. We've been pumping a lot into Perth from the Dutch East Indies when we had them, and I think that really got us off to a good start there. Loading fuel from Pago Pago, which has 12,000 fuel left, plus the 15,000 on the replenishment task force, but then 110,000 supplies at Pago Pago. So that base is in very good shape supply-wise. It's up to level 4 forts, working toward 5, but still a ways away. We're unloading a new battalion of troops, or new regiment of troops. The 147th Separate Infantry Regiment is unloading at Vavu. Once they complete their unloading, then this task force will shift over to loading up the 2nd Marines, because what I would like to do is form up the 2nd Marine Division. To do that, I've got to get the 2nd Marine Regiment, the 6th Marine Regiment, the 2nd USMC Engineer Regiment, and the 8th Marines all in the same base so I can merge them. Right now, the 8th Marines are on Savi. The 2nd Marines are on Vavu. The 6th Marines are on a task force on its way to... where are they? Where are they on their way to? Melbourne? Okay, so yeah, we'll probably push them all into Australia, and they can reform there. That's where the 2nd USMC Engineer Regiment is also headed. Okay, so those guys are unloading and then they'll switch over. Vadavipu, we've got a Kanga base force which is moving in here to the Ellis Islands to try and take back some of these Japanese bases on the periphery. Our cruisers bombarded Canton Island. You can see here basically no meaningful damage. Canberra took a couple shell hits, but it didn't do any damage to her. And it looks like we still have a little bit of ammo left. So maybe what we'll do here is we'll issue an order to bombard Canton and then retire back to Pago Pago. So we'll try and bombard Canton one more time with the ammo we have left. It looks like there's one base force of about 2,400 troops, 16 guns, so enough to put up a modest fight. But if we landed a regiment on Canton, we would take the base from the Japanese, which is my goal because we've already taken Baker up here with a base force. Or actually, was it? It was a Marine Defense Battalion. And I'd love to take Canton because that's kind of the thorn in our side. That'll sort of reform a U-shaped defensive line here to the northeast of the Fiji line and solidify our position there so that, you know, if we wanted to lunge toward Tarawa and try and drive into the Solomons, we could potentially cut off considerable Japanese forces down here in New Caledonia and Espiritu Santo. We could potentially just launch an assault into Tarawa and then work our way up the Marshall Islands and then maybe toward Wake and Eniwetok, and then maybe just go directly to the Marianas, which would have the same effect as pushing here to cut off the Japanese to the south. That might actually not be a bad idea either, is driving into the Tarawa and the Gilberts and then pushing north with land-based air based out of Tarawa to support lands on Majuro, Jalut, Maralap, Woje. I'm sorry with these pronunciations. Kwajalein, I know how to pronounce that one. And then that would perhaps set up a staging board to drive for truck, or again, just move north toward the Marianas. We could just go the Central Pacific route and not even bother with, you know, New Guinea. Again, we lost Port Moresby, so unless the Japanese start dropping air raids onto Australia, I don't know that there's an imminent need to move out that way. How are our subs doing at Meaden here? We've got the Tautog, which has taken a little bit of damage. We've got the Shark, which has not taken like any damage. We've got the Sauri, which has taken no damage pretty much either. So all that depth charging hasn't really hurt us too much. We've got a cruiser task force moving northwest with a cruiser and a couple of destroyers. Fairly small task force, 4 ships. So no indication the Japanese are trying to raid and break into the Andaman Sea or anything, which could be a threat. Those convoys, like if I was Japan, I might consider, you know, we've got no air protection down here, so you could probably launch like commerce raiding task forces with a few cruisers and destroyers in here to try and cut off supplies moving between Australia and Burma. That's a thing you could do. Thresher, almost out of ammo. She's still got some rear tubes, but burning through that pretty quickly. She's not hitting anything either, though, so I'm glad the skipper's aggressive. He's not accomplishing anything with this aggression. And then Silversides is almost out of ammo as well, so we need to put a new group of subs here. Looks like we've actually already got one on the way. The Sailfish will be there in a couple days. All right, so we've got one sub that'll be on position there. It's a pretty busy corridor for shipping. What's this guy doing? Just chilling here? I don't want to send him to Japan with almost 50% of his fuel gone, but probably return to base. There's really no... I don't think there's any reason to be deployed there. Let's take a look here. Any aircraft lost last turn? Nothing. One of ours by flak, one on the ground. The Japanese lost nothing again. We got to figure out a way to start making them pay for some of those airstrikes. What about Costco? So how are the troops doing here? We saw some reasonably heavy casualties. Second AIF has about a third of their troops knocked out, disabled, not destroyed, but disabled. Lieutenant Colonel Leggett. And then the second AF Pioneer Battalion's in better shape. Supply situation here. is okay-ish. Not great, but okay for the small force we've got there. The bombing raids have no real damage on port or airfield. There is no real airfield to speak of there. We do actually have level 3 forts, so the bombing raids could be doing a little less damage, I suppose. I wouldn't mind if I had some float fighter planes like the Japanese with their float zeros. That would be nice, because these Japanese bombers are coming in pretty much unescorted. So if we could surprise them, we could do some real damage. The range is 20, which I think is beyond the Japanese ability to escort them. Well, I suppose they could throw escorts into Benelican or Oosthaven. Oosthaven is in range of zeros, I believe. Let's take a look. So the A6M20 range of, no, they can't even escort at extended range with drop tanks there. So actually, if we could get any kind of fighter support over Coast to Coast, we'd have an opportunity potentially to do some real hurt to those Japanese. I'm not sure I want to deploy a carrier off the coast. That feels like that would be putting a carrier in a risky position. Could be bait. But maybe if we could get some small aircraft and get that airfield built up a little bit. What are we working on there, fort-wise or building-wise? We really need a base force there. Airfield's not building, just the forts. Huh. So we'll have to take a look at that. Yeah, a little bit of R&R, Iron Priest. Meanwhile, we do have some troops in India that have arrived from the U.S. I don't know where I put them all. Chittagong has some U.S. artillery and the U.S. Air Force. Lido has a 53rd Infantry Regiment in the U.S. Army and the 808th Aviation Unit. Doesn't we have more than that? Karachi has a East African brigade. I swear we had more than that. I know we've got 2 or 3 U.S. divisions on the way. But I guess they're not on the map yet. What do we have coming here in terms of ship availability? Ship availability, we've got a cargo ship, the Cape Flattery, coming in 2 days. The destroyer Aaron Ward coming in 5. Couple of S-boats coming in 5. And then the Wasp is coming in 2 weeks. So we've got the aircraft carrier Wasp coming in 2 weeks. North Carolina also in 2 weeks. So those will be some nice things to have. And we're just doing some logistics. So a little bit of a quiet turn. We know those troops in the Philippines are not going to survive much longer. What's the sub doing here? Gato, you need some fuel, buddy. There's no fuel here for you. $800 endurance. Where can you even get to with that? Can you get... Darwin has fuel. Can you get there? No. I guess we can probably pull some fuel out of Bataan, right? 1900 fuel there. Little worried about the airstrikes. How much fuel does this thing take? So it's got 23 left, which is 7%. So if we throw 40 in there, that'll be another 14% of fuel. So that'll probably get it back to Australia. So let's set the base. I don't want to put it into Bataan. There's too much air activity going up there. Let's set the base to Roxas, which has 60 fuel. And then we'll replenish there and then see if we can't get home with that fuel. If we need to, we can pick up another 40 fuel from Ilo. Just kind of sucking what little fuel we have out of the Philippines. Meanwhile, we do have several transports which are now docked and unloading fuel or unloading supply. We've got 4 submarines here unloading 192 supply, which is not much at all, but 192 supply is, you know, that's enough to feed some soldiers, I guess. Hey, J Street. It would be an increase of our supply situation at Clark Field by 25%. So more than that, actually, closer to 30%. So there's that. Let's take a look at SIGINT. What's that telling me? A KD-6A class submarine's moving to Luganville, which is in the south. That's near Espiritu Santos, so that's good to know. They may be operating subs in that area against us. I don't recognize the KD-6A, though. Is that one of their, like, tiny subs that has to have, like, a mother sub type deal? They've got a base force located at Luganville as well, like an Air Force construction force. But yeah, not a lot of important information there. Yeah, so I think that's going to do it, guys. I know this is a bit of a shorter stream. I do appreciate you guys coming out, but I think that's going to do it for tonight's episode. I may stream tomorrow. I did get access to the alpha for Arms Trade Tycoon, so maybe we'll play that tomorrow and see how that plays. It's still very early. It's in alpha, but that's a game that went through like a Kickstarter, but is also published by Microprose. So maybe we'll take a look at that tomorrow. I don't know. We'll see. But that's going to do it for tonight. I hope you guys did enjoy this stream and episode. Thank you very much for coming out. Until next time, this is the Historical Gamer once again saying thank you for watching, and I'm out.